Every single second, the United States government goes another $100,000 deeper into debt. Not every hour, not every minute, every second. By the time you finish watching this video, America will owe roughly another $60 million. And what's about to happen next could change your financial life forever. Right now, the United States national debt sits above $34 trillion. That number is so large, it barely means anything to the human brain anymore. So let me make it real. If you stacked $34 trillion in $1 bills on top of each other, the pile would stretch past the moon, past Mars. It would reach roughly 2.3 million miles into space. But here's the part that should genuinely worry you. It's not the debt itself. Countries carry debt, they always have. It's the interest on that debt. In 2024, the U.S. federal government spent over $1 trillion just on interest payments. Not on roads, not on schools, not on the military, just on the privilege of owing money. Let that sink in for a moment. The interest payment alone now exceeds the entire U.S. defense budget. It exceeds what the government spends on veterans, education, and transportation combined. And this isn't a future projection. This is happening right now. The United States of America, the richest country in the history of civilization, is spending more money servicing its debt than defending its borders, and almost nobody is talking about it. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to a moment most people have completely forgotten. In the year 2000, the United States had a budget surplus. The government was actually bringing in more money than it spent. Economists at the time genuinely debated whether the national debt might be paid off entirely within a decade. That feels like science fiction now. Then came September 11th. Two wars, Afghanistan and Iraq, that would eventually cost an estimated $8 trillion. Then came the 2008 financial crisis, where the government injected hundreds of billions into the banking system to prevent total economic collapse. Then came COVID-19, when trillions more were printed and distributed in a matter of months. Each crisis was an emergency. Each response felt necessary at the time, and each one added trillions to the tab. But here's what most people miss. The spending never went back down. After every crisis ended, the baseline level of government spending simply stayed higher. It ratcheted up, and it never ratcheted back. Think of it like a household that takes on credit card debt during a medical emergency. Understandable, but instead of paying it off once the emergency passes, they just keep spending at that elevated level and then open 3 more credit cards. In 2000, the national debt was about $5.6 trillion. In just 24 years, it has grown 6-fold, and it's accelerating. The Congressional Budget Office projects that by 2034, the national debt will exceed $50 trillion. Some independent analysts believe it could approach $60 trillion if current spending trends continue. We are not slowly walking toward a cliff, we're sprinting. Now here's where it gets really uncomfortable. There's a dirty little secret in Washington that neither political party wants to admit publicly. There is no plan to pay this off. None. Not from the left, not from the right. Not from any serious policy proposal currently on the table, and the reason is brutally simple. The math doesn't work. The 3 biggest line items in the federal budget are Social Security, Medicare, and now interest on the debt. Together, these 3 categories consume roughly 60 to 65% of all federal spending. Cutting Social Security is political suicide. Millions of retirees depend on it. Medicare is the same. And you can't exactly stop paying interest on your debt. That would trigger a default, which would make the 2008 crisis look like a mild inconvenience. So what's left? Defense, education, infrastructure, scientific research, foreign aid? Even if you eliminated every single one of those programs entirely, zeroed them all out, you still wouldn't balance the budget in most projected years. That's the hidden truth. The debt isn't a problem that can be solved with spending cuts alone, and raising taxes enough to cover the gap would require increases so dramatic they would almost certainly trigger a recession. We are stuck in a financial feedback loop. We borrow money to pay the interest on the money we already borrowed, and every year the loop gets bigger. Former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan once said the United States can pay any debt it has because it can always print money. And he was technically right, but printing money has consequences, and those consequences land directly on your doorstep. Here's how this machine actually works. When the government needs money it doesn't have, it issues Treasury bonds. Investors, both domestic and foreign, buy those bonds. In return, the government promises to pay them back with interest. For decades, this system worked beautifully because U.S. Treasuries were considered the safest investment on Earth. Countries like China and Japan bought hundreds of billions of dollars worth. But two things have changed. First, interest rates are no longer near zero. During the 2010s, the government could borrow at absurdly low rates, sometimes below 2%. Today, rates on new Treasury bonds are hovering between 4 and 5%. That means every dollar of new debt costs roughly twice as much to service. Second, foreign buyers are pulling back. China has been steadily reducing its holdings of U.S. Treasuries for years. Other nations are doing the same. The question of who will buy the next $10 trillion in American debt is no longer hypothetical, it's urgent. When fewer buyers show up at the auction, the government has to offer higher interest rates to attract them. Higher interest rates means larger interest payments. Larger interest payments mean more borrowing to cover those payments. You see the spiral. This is why some economists now use a term that used to be reserved for developing nations, a debt trap. So why should you care? Because you're already paying for it, whether you realize it or not. When the government prints money or borrows excessively, the value of every dollar in your bank account quietly decreases. That's inflation, and inflation is essentially a hidden tax on everyone. In 2020, a typical grocery run for a family of 4 cost around $150. Today, that same cart costs $200 or more. Your salary may have gone up, but your purchasing power, what your money can actually buy, has gone down. Young Americans trying to buy a first home are facing mortgage rates that have doubled. Retirement savings are being eroded. Small businesses are struggling under higher borrowing costs. The national debt isn't an abstract number on a government website. It's the reason your rent went up. It's the reason your grocery bill feels heavier. It's the reason your dollar buys less today than it did 5 years ago. And the people hurt most are not the wealthy. The wealthy own assets, real estate, stocks, businesses that tend to rise with inflation. It's working families, people on fixed incomes, and young people just starting out who bear the heaviest burden. The national debt is in many ways a wealth transfer from the many to the few, happening in slow motion. Zoom out even further and the picture gets more sobering. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. That means global trade, oil, commodities, international loans is largely conducted in dollars. This gives America an extraordinary privilege. It can borrow more cheaply than any other nation on Earth. But that privilege is not guaranteed forever. Countries like China, Russia, Brazil, India, and Saudi Arabia are actively exploring alternatives. BRICS nations are discussing trade settlements in other currencies. Central banks around the world are buying gold at record levels, a classic hedge against dollar instability. If the dollar loses its reserve currency status, even partially, the cost of America's debt becomes dramatically more expensive overnight, and the entire financial system as we know it shifts on its axis. This isn't fear-mongering. This is the stated strategy of multiple world governments playing out in real time. Here's the uncomfortable bottom line. The $34 trillion national debt isn't a Republican problem. It's not a Democrat problem. It grew under every administration for the past 24 years, regardless of who sat in the Oval Office. And there's no painless solution. Either taxes go up significantly or spending gets cut in ways that affect millions of Americans, or the government keeps printing and your dollar keeps shrinking. There is no door number 4. The clock is ticking. It has been ticking for years, and the question is no longer whether this will affect your life. It already has. The only question left is what are you going to do about it? If this video opened your eyes, hit that subscribe button. We break down the financial systems that quietly shape your life every single week. And if you want to understand what happens when a country actually defaults on its debt, watch this video next, because it's already happened, and the aftermath was devastating.